Welcome in, everybody, to the PHLY Eagles Podcast. We are live from the Xfinity Mobile Studio on a Thursday afternoon, and we are presented by Ashley and Bet365. I am your host today, EJ Smith, and I am joined by a very special guest, Olivia Reiner of the Philadelphia Inquirer, one of my, I would say, a former colleague, current good friend, fellow espresso enthusiast / hater maybe at times. And yeah, like I said, a very special guest. So thank you for joining us, Olivia. How you doing?
I'm happy to be here. This feels like old times a little bit. It's great to see you. It's funny because like everyone asks me like, oh, what's it like not working with EJ anymore? And during the season, even though we do not work together anymore, I see you all the time.
Yeah, we still sit next to each other in the media house. I think that's important to note. Yeah.
Like things don't feel that much different. There are obviously certain differences, but like, especially in the off season, I think that's when it feels the most different, when we're not like seeing each other really that frequently. So it's good to see you.
Yeah, well, we need to change that. You got to come over. You can see the dogs. The chat calls Maddox Big P, so you got to come over and see Big P and Pharaoh. I'm sure that they would be happy to see you. But yeah, I'm very excited to go through some Eagles topics. Olivia is, for those of you who are not familiar with her work, I would say top 2, top 3 most thorough reporters on the beat. Most hardworking reporters on the beat. So you've got to make sure you subscribe to the Inquirer. And, you know, I always told people when I did podcasts, when I was on the Inquirer, click on Olivia's story, scroll to the bottom, spend some time on the story, and then subscribe once you're about to click off to kind of boost your numbers a little bit. So I wanted to start, Olivia, with some news that came across our feeds this morning, that Cam Jurgens did a podcast appearance with the guys over at Bussin' with the Boys and talked about his, the level of pain and the level of challenge that he faced, playing with a back injury the last couple of years. I guess what stood out to you when you listened to Cam Jurgens' comments about, what he's been going through the last 2 years?
I think the severity of the injury really stood out. I mean, we knew that Cam had been dealing with the lingering effects of this injury, plus like other injuries too, just like Landon. It wasn't just one thing that Cam was dealing with last year. I know he dealt with a knee injury at times too, and he spoke about that during the season. But I think the severity of the injury really stood out. I want to make sure I'm quoting this exactly correctly. But I think what he said was that he had like a part of the disc in his back.
It was like a herniated disc, and he said that eventually it like broke off, or like something severe, basically.
I mean, it sounds absolutely brutal, and I think it's a lesson in you really never know what someone is dealing with on the field, off the field. And that's not to say that you can't critique their performance on the field. But I think that is to say, like, we don't always have all the answers in front of us in any given moment in time. So I think he certainly, it's very clear that he's played through a lot, and to the point that he, is now going out of the country to, try different forms of treatment in getting these, this stem cell therapy. So just the severity of the injury, I think, was really not shocking necessarily, but it certainly raised my eyebrows.
Yeah, I think moment in time is a good way to put it, because, and just for clarification, so he said that he had a disc that broke off before the playoffs and quote unquote wrapped around his sciatic nerve. As a man who is now 31 years old and getting a little bit older and starting to experience some of the back trouble that you hear old men and really just old people complain about, the sciatic nerve, like that stuff can be really serious. Like it can really affect the amount of blood flow and the amount of feeling you have in your legs. So it definitely sounds, really difficult. He said it was hard for him to walk, and he doesn't really know how he was playing. But you mentioned a moment in time, and that made me think about, that playoff run the Eagles went on in 2024, and how everyone talked about how tough Cam Jurgens was to be able to play through the injury that he played through, and like disbelief that he was willing to play through that injury in the postseason. And it's easy to lose sight of that when you go through an entire season watching him struggle. But, watching him play worse than he was playing the year before. And, I especially think because of the fact that Cam Jurgens was kind of guarded about this injury for most of last season, it was easy to forget that he did kind of put himself through such a grueling playoff run when such a bad injury. But yeah, I think if you're an Eagles fan, this was, very illuminating on what Cam Jurgens has been going through. I would say it didn't make me feel better or worse about what it will look like for him next season. You know, he says that it's getting better. He says it really takes a full year to recover from an injury like that. But I still feel like if you're someone who is wondering if Cam Jurgens will ever be the same player, like as hard as a question as that is to ask, or, especially given, what he's gone through, I don't think it's a straightforward answer. I think that there is a chance that this affects him long-term based off of how severe it sounded.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's such a serious injury to have, and then also such a serious surgery to have. We don't know exactly, I'm not a doctor. However, I've covered players who have had herniated discs in their back, and the different kinds of surgery that you can have, the kind of mobility that you can have or not have after that kind of surgery, and whether or not you can become or return to the form that you had previously achieved as an athlete. I think those are the big questions. We'll see how he is able to rebound. And I think, especially with the stem cells, I think that could have the potential to address some of the pain. I think that's sort of the bottom line with that kind of treatment. I'm looking forward to getting to actually speak to Cam once OTAs roll around and getting a little bit more insight into that process and everything that he has been dealing with, both recently in his rehab and in the past year. Perhaps he'll be more willing to open up about it, just as he was on this podcast. But no, really, really eye-opening, just his comments over these last couple of days.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how he looks in training camp for sure. I'm also very curious, as our listeners of the show will know, to see how Drew Kendall looks, because I think that Cam probably does have more positional versatility in this system than he would have in years past. He's played guard in his career, obviously. I don't think he was like an ideal Jeff Stoutland guard, but I think for Sean Mannion and Chris Cooper, he might make sense to play guard at some point. Maybe not right away, but at some point during the season. So, with that said, like, movement skills are going to be very important for him. In that, I think when I picture like the best version of Cam Jurgens playing guard, it's because of the fact that he, has been billed as an athletic guy on the interior who can get out in space. He just really struggled with that last year. So, I appreciated hearing his side on it. I've talked on the show before about how it felt like we all knew he was going through something, maybe something more than he let on. But it definitely always seemed like he was a little bit reluctant to really indulge like that side of whatever he was going through.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting that you talk about his versatility, and I know you've spoken about Drew Kendall, and it's the whole offensive line right now, I think, is it's an interesting point in time right now for that entire group, given the uncertainty of Lane Johnson's future and whether he's going to continue to play beyond the season, coming off of the foot injury last year. And then with Landon Dickerson too, dealing with myriad injuries last season, and also traveling to Columbia to get those stem cell, therapy as well. So, questions about his future and the fact that he reportedly agreed to a restructured contract that took off a year of his previous deal too. So there's questions about his long-term future. A lot of questions right now on the offensive line. I think you could potentially rank Cam Jurgens like the third biggest concern about addressing his future, but it's still a question that the Eagles are asking themselves or having those discussions now.
Yeah. All right. So we will talk more about the offensive line later in the show, because we're going to introduce a little game here for today's edition. And I think, Bo is watching at home. Maybe he'll watch this later on in the day. And I think he will be proud when he hears the conceit of today's show. I guess I'll pull the listeners behind the curtain a little bit. I texted Zach Berman last night. I was like, what are some games that you haven't played on the show in a while that you really miss? And he told me about Tick Zach Bo. And I was obviously vaguely familiar with Tick Zach Bo, but when we're going to repurpose it for today's show. So I want to welcome the listeners into Smith Tack O for today. O clearly for Olivia, our special guest. We will have to repurpose that again if we do it with Bo. But the conceit of this is going to be as follows. We're going to have 3 different categories. We're going to have free agency. We're going to have the NFL draft. And we're going to have miscellaneous. It could be anything. Could be owners meetings previews. Could be pop culture questions. Could be, who knows? You really don't know. It's the fun with the miscellaneous category. And we're going to have 3 question types for each of these categories. We're going to have Would You Rather. We're going to have convince me. And then we're going to have predict the future. Olivia is going to choose these questions at random. She does not know what the questions are, except for maybe like one or two. I kind of gave you a little bit of a hint. But yeah, you're going to pick them at random, and then we're going to hopefully touch on a lot of different Eagles topics. So do you have one that you want to go with early here on the board? Did you have one that really stood out to you?
May I just say, I just another peek behind the curtain. You told me I could not prepare, and I didn't really obviously prepare. You did not give me the questions in advance. However, I did go back and listen to a previous podcast with Zach and Bo of them playing this game. So I would have
more preparation than I did.
You were explaining it to me last night, and I was like, I think I understand how this works. However, I just to be certain, and I'm still probably going to screw something up. So
I think it's there's even if you do, it's my job as the host to make sure that we stay on course here.
Okay. All right. Okay. I feel like we should start with an Eagles related one.
Yeah. I like that.
Feet wet.
This is inverted pyramid. You're classic J journalist here. I respect that. Yeah. Let's get the news up top.
Very smart. So why don't we do Eagles convinced me?
Oh, okay. Do you want to do free agency or the draft?
Let's do free agency.
This game couldn't have gotten off to a better start because this is one of our sponsored segments. This is going to be the right people presented by TrueMark Financial Credit Union. And the question for you, Olivia, is I want you to convince me who the best free agency signing has been for the Eagles so far.
Ooh, okay. I think I'm going to zag a little bit.
I like this.
I think the easy answer would be to say Riq Woolen, simply because of the nature of the role that he will assume this upcoming season in Vic Fangio's defense. Strengthening an already strong core of cornerbacks alongside Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. I think that would be a perfectly acceptable answer. And one might say that that is the answer. But I think also looking maybe in the greater context of what the Eagles needs were going into this offseason, the tight ends room has been under a lot of scrutiny this offseason, and kind of the types that were in the tight ends room. And Howie Roseman admitted as much in the lead up to the combine, talking about how he tends to have a penchant for receiving tight ends, and that perhaps he didn't do enough in diversifying the skill sets in the room. And I say that as you have a picture of Cam Latu over your shoulder, so I'm fully aware of that.
Very observant of you. Yeah.
There are varying skill sets in the tight ends room, so no shade to Cam Latu. However, I think that the addition of Johnny Mundt is at least an interesting one in that it gives them someone who is a blocking tight end who has experience playing with Sean Mannion, has experience playing for Chris Cooper. Grant Calcaterra, bringing him back, I think Grant
changes everything. Yeah.
Also, he's a great receiving tight end, but putting him in a position to do the things that he's good at, I think bringing in Johnny Mundt will give the Eagles, an opportunity to put, maybe take some of that pressure off of, both Calcaterra and Dallas Goedert, even though Goedert in the past, not necessarily this past season, has been a pretty decent blocker. But I think it was a smart signing. It made a lot of sense. And it doesn't count against the comp pick formula because he was a street free agent. He had been released before the start of the new year.
Yeah, I am upset that you chose him. I thought you were going to go Riq Woolen. I thought you were going to go Chaco with the first one here. And I was going to go with Johnny Mundt. So I'll go with my my tongue-in-cheek answer, which is Elijah Moore. Because who knows? Maybe Elijah Moore is the guy that convinces A.J. Brown, you know what? Maybe it's time to run it back. Maybe you got one more year here, push for a Super Bowl, and if he does achieve that, then it's a lot of value added for not a big cost. So jokes aside, I like Riq Woolen as a choice, but again, I think he is probably the straightforward answer. Arnold Ebiketie, I think, is another one that's interesting. I think we could look back and say that Arnold Ebiketie was actually their best free agency signing, depending on how things go for him. We mentioned him as potentially the next Zach Bond earlier in the week. And I do think that there's a sentiment among Eagles fans where there's, maybe it's because of the Azeez Ojulari signing and the way that went, they look at Arnold Ebiketie through like Azeez Ojulari colored glasses, right? Where you're a little bit negative about it because you feel like I just saw the Eagles try this type of thing and it didn't work out. But I think the process that led them to Azeez Ojulari is a good process, to sign a player with draft pedigree, a player who you think has at least theoretical upside that their best football could be ahead of them. And I think Arnold Ebiketie checks a lot of those boxes. And the crucial thing is he doesn't have the injury history that Azeez Ojulari has. So there's less reason to believe that he's going to play worse or kind of continue to regress. I just think he needs to be in the right system. I'm not telling you I think he's going to be a Pro Bowler, but I think that he could give them quality snaps. I think he could give them quality productivity from the edge rusher position. And it's a spot that they need probably to keep adding to. So I would probably lean Arnold Ebiketie since you took Johnny Munt. But again, as you know, from the fact that Cam Latu is on my bookshelf, there's also a cup with a laminated piece of paper that says Cam Latu on my bookshelf right next to it right there. So, so I just, needless to say, I love blocking tight ends. I love tight ends that are capable of getting their hands dirty in the run game. So Johnny Munt would have been my pick, but I'll take Arnold Ebiketie. I think that's another, kind of a zag from the obvious one.
Does Cam Latu know about this, by the way?
No, he definitely doesn't know about this. We've had like a handful of nice conversations, but he's not aware of like the cult hero status that he reached on the show. There's a backstory, Olivia. It's like I have been ahead of the curve. My co-hosts aren't here. I can talk freely. I can say what I want, and they can't be here to rebut it. So, I was early on Cam Latu. I identified the talent early in the season, and Fran and Bo hand waved it. And then, he becomes, a thing, and people are like, oh man, this guy, like respected football minds out there are saying Cam Latu should be playing more. And, Bo and Fran, they couldn't take any credit for Cam Latu, so they hate him instead. And that's why I've been even more emboldened in my Cam Latu advocacy. So, it's a rare win for me on the podcast, I would say.
He's your version of Bo's camp crush,
yes,
but not for camp.
Yeah, no, it was that Chiefs game. Do you remember he got on the field for like one play against the Chiefs and he blocked a guy through the back of the end zone and everybody was all excited about it, and it's like I was like, that's my guy right there. So and he's a nice guy. I'm sure you've had conversations with Cam Latu, and yeah, he's a very nice guy. So I don't know how much longer he's going to stay on the bookshelf, but I mean, it's kind of a fun bit at this point.
I'm not telling you to change a thing. I think it's great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. All right, that's going to do it for the right people presented by TrueMark. We are going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with more of Smith Tack O, the game that's sweeping the nation. So stay with us, and we'll see which category Olivia picks next. Do you really want Jalen Hurts returning punts? What about Devontae Smith playing nose tackle? Of course not. It's not worth the risk, the time, or the money. You keep your stars focused on what they do best, and the same idea should apply to your business. For small and mid-sized businesses, competing with bigger companies isn't about working harder, it's about working smarter. With competition heating up, you can't afford to fall behind, and AI goes way beyond ChatGPT. It can get overwhelming very quickly. That's why having a trusted guide like Togo matters. Instead of buying expensive AI tools, Togo helps you build exactly what you need at a fraction of the cost. They streamline your operations by handling customer service, accounting, order management, logistics, admin, data entry, and even complex multi-step processes without the cost of building it all in-house. Every engagement starts with free process mapping, and Togo doesn't bill a dime until the real work begins. Programs start as low as $1,000 a month and are built to scale without breaking the bank. Visit Harness Togo and mention PHLY for a free operational assessment. At Bet365, they understand that the only thing better than winning bets with your money is winning bets with theirs. And there's never been a better time to do just that than right now. They're running a bet $10, get $365 promo available to every single new Bet365 user. All you have to do is sign up, make a $10 bet, and win or lose, you'll be given $365 in bonus bets, because it never hurts to have a little extra cheese to start off the MLB season. Bet365, where winning is everything. Download the app today and use code PHLY365 at sign up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Please gamble responsibly. Must be present in PA. $10 minimum deposit required. Bonus bet wager excluded from returns. New customers only. 21 plus only. Time limits, minimum odds, and terms and conditions apply. In-app only. Void where prohibited. All right, we are back on the PHLY Eagles podcast. We have some breaking news. I don't know if you know about this, Olivia. You do know about this, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. The Eagles announced new numbers. Oh, is that not the breaking news you thought I was going to reference?
I was trying to
I appreciate it. You were emoting as the kids say. All right. So Hollywood Brown, number 0. Yes, I'm going to go through them and you give me thumbs up or thumbs down. You can say thumbs up or thumbs down. Give me your instant reaction when you see the number. When you hear the number.
I'm just so fixated on the fact that there are 2 receivers with the last name Brown on the roster right now.
Yeah, there's a lot.
It's just a lot.
At least it's not like Brown, like I guess 11's not in the jeopardy zone for the Eagles in terms of like numbers that look the same from the press box. Like if AJ Brown was number 16 and Hollywood Brown were 18, I mean, we would be in the, we'd be in the trenches. We'd be in the blender with that one. So, we needed some differentiation, and I think that's a good way of looking at it from like a reporter aspect. I don't know how I feel about a wide receiver wearing 0, but all right, we'll see. I don't hate it.
Our references are DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, I thought he was fine at 0. Bryce Huff wore 0.
Yeah,
it's kind of a cursed number.
Yeah. Not great.
We'll see if Hollywood Brown can reverse the curse. Reek Woolen, number 2. How do you feel about that one?
I like it because I think it invokes a little Darius Slay energy, and I think that is a good thing. Personally, I think Slay is a good player for the Eagles, and why not? Sure, I like the 2.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite. Just from quickly looking through, I think that's my favorite. Tank Bigsby, number 8. How do we feel about that one?
You see, you associate all these numbers with who wore them or people who wore them previously. And so to me, I think CJ, and now I think Adoree too. So in my head, it is defensive back-esque. However, I like it for running back. That doesn't
I kind of like 8 for Tank Bigsby there. All right, I'm going to go through these quickly because I feel like we don't need to like Elijah Moore 13. I like that one. I mean, it's fine. I can't think of a notable 13 in the Eagles lore. I feel like what number did Travis Fulgham wear? Now I said I was going to go through these quickly, and now here I am Googling. Travis Fulgham wore number 13. That's bad vibes.
You said notable?
I like Travis Fulgham. Okay. Andy Dalton 14. I think that's fine. Arnold Ebiketie 17. I like that one. I don't know if you know this about me, Olivia, but 17 was my number when I was playing basketball and before I moved to the offensive line. So I like a 17. It's my dad's number 2. Marcus Epps, number 29. What was he before?
He was 39, right?
Last year he was 39. Was he 29 in his first stint with the Eagles? He used to be 22.
Was Avante 29?
Yeah, when he first got there. Okay, maybe that's the number he always wanted. I think it's fine. Jonathan Jones 32. I think that's absolutely fine. All right. The rest of these, why is Pierce? Damian Pierce, number 39. That one's fine. JT Gray 48. Perfect special teamer number. Johnny Munt 83. I don't think I like it.
It's Kylan Granson was 83 last year. If I'm not mistaken.
Get Johnny Munt a number in the 40s. Get him an ugly number. We needed that. That's what I would have gone for.
I don't know about that.
Stone Smart at 87. I think that's a good receiver tight end type of number. All right, riveting stuff. Love some jersey numbers. I feel like there are people who do like stock up, stock down on jersey numbers, Olivia. I mean, do we want to get into that content game?
I mean, now my mind is there because you asked me about it, and I'm like,
stock up Reek Woolen. I think number 2 is a good number.
I'll give Ebiketie too at 17. I know people might have some feelings about that because that was Nakobe's number, and perhaps the wound is still fresh.
Yeah.
However, I don't know.
I mean, it was also Harold Carmichael's number. they got over that one. I love Nakobe as much as anybody, but yeah, I think it's okay to repurpose the number. I mean, 86 is still out there. There's some interesting. I guess at some point you can't retire every number. So, all right, let's get back to Smith Taco. Do you have another category that you had your eye on? Do you need to see them? Do we need to flash them up?
I pulled your text message up during the break just so I could jog.
Always prepared.
Always prepared. Can't be caught slacking here. I think I want to dip my toes back into the Eagles before we go into a miscellaneous category. And I think let's do the draft and let's do Would You Rather.
All right. So this is one of my favorite ones. Would you rather the Eagles draft Kenyon Sadiq in the first round or find a Lane Johnson successor instead? If you could only pick one, obviously you could only pick one in the first round. Who are you going to pick, Kenyon Sadiq or a Lane Johnson successor?
Well, in this hypothetical world, I would be shocked if Kenyon Sadiq was there for the Eagles.
I agree with you. It's just there is a lot. Here's what I think is happening. I think that the mock draft scene is a little bit slow to catch up to the actual league's evaluation of Kenyon Sadiq, right? But most mock drafts that I see, and not most, but a good amount of the mock drafts I see have Sadiq going in the late 20s, which is why I still think you can't close the door on it. I think if he's there at 23, it would surprise me. But again, people who spend time prognosticating these things have him going in the late 20s.
All right. I think I'm going to go with, even though, let's say he's there. Let's say he's available. I still feel like the Eagles would probably have put more value in an offensive tackle in that spot than in a tight end. So I'll go with the offensive tackle. I feel like the Eagles, because I'm not by any means an expert in this draft class at this point in time. However, this, from what I understand, is a pretty deep draft class at the tight end position. Perhaps the Eagles can identify their tight end of the future in the later rounds who has some time to get up to speed behind, the Dallas Goedert and all the draft proofing that they did on the roster at the position this offseason. And I think that the clock is ticking on finding a Lane Johnson successor, unless they, for some reason feel really confidently about a Miles Hinton or a Cam Williams, someone who's already on the roster. But I think that especially early in the draft, and that after like the first tier or so of those offensive tackles, if you think that there's going to be a pretty substantial drop off in terms of their, future capabilities of evolving into a starting offensive tackle and a high end one at that. But otherwise, I think that offensive tackle makes more sense to target in the first round.
Yeah, I really struggle with this one. I think the Eagles' positional prioritization would suggest that they would rather go offensive line here. I think the way that the board falls, they should have some decent options at 23 at offensive tackle. If you told me it was like Kadyn Proctor, I would probably lean Kadyn Proctor. Fran's big board, he has Kadyn Proctor, I think, a spot higher than Kenyon Sadiq. And I really think that Proctor is a type of offensive line prospect that the Eagles typically like to target. With that said, if you look at the Eagles offense right now, there aren't many spots that you think they could add a player in the draft that could make an impact day one and really make an impact in the 2026 season to a significant degree. If you're drafting a Lane Johnson successor, you're hoping you don't see them in year one unless they can play guard like Kadyn Proctor. Theoretically, like maybe they could play right guard. But I do think that Kenyon Sadiq gives them a pathway to adding like a proven or at least a better chance at an impact player in year one and a player that could be on the field. You think about the way that the Green Bay Packers use Tucker Kraft and how Sean Mannion is bringing a similar scheme to the Eagles. If you have Kenyon Sadiq and Dallas Goedert as your top two tight ends, and then you have Johnny Munt as your third tight end, your blocking tight end, that opens the door for you to do some things schematically that I think would be really, really advantageous for a first-year offensive coordinator. So give me Sadiq. If Sadiq is there at 23, if it's Kadyn Proctor, I'd have a really hard time making that decision. If it's some of the guys that are ranked a little bit lower than Kadyn Proctor, I think I'd rather have the turnkey tight end, right? The Dallas Goedert successor, somebody that opens the door for you to play to 12 and 13 personnel and, really be able to, again, have different levers you can pull throughout the season. Sometimes I feel like we lose sight of the fact, especially when in draft season, like this team could win a Super Bowl next year. I think, having somebody that can walk in the door and have at least a clear path to making an impact, it's a really tough call, but I sort of lean Kenyon Sadiq just ever so slightly.
I like it. I think it's the fun pick for sure.
For sure.
Like
the thing in the back of my head, that like the devil and the angel on my shoulder, the Cam Latu, the other side of my Cam Latu, the anti-tight end side of this argument here. It's harder to find a really, really high level offensive tackle prospect in the second round of the draft. It just is. So if you're not going offensive line in the first round, I mean, I think they could go. I think I could see him doubling up on the interior offensive line on the second day of the draft, but it's going to be hard to find a Lane Johnson successor if you don't prioritize it in the first round.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think both arguments. I think you can make both arguments.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see what they do. I agree with you that the Sadiq thing, it's been interesting because if you watch him and you see how highly a lot of people rate him, you would expect that he'd be a top 15 pick. I've heard, he's not going to make it past 13 or 14 overall, but I've just seen enough mock drafts now where he's in the 20s that I'm starting to wonder where he really will fall. Maybe it'll be like Michael Williams last year, where he kind of shoots up the board at the end of the draft process here. But all right, what's your next category of choice here? Are you sticking with the Eagles? You going miscellaneous?
No, I think we can go miscellaneous now. Let's do that. So we've done a convince me, we've done a would you rather. So let's do a predict the future miscellaneous.
Okay, predict the future miscellaneous. So I know you think that these aren't Eagles topics, but this one is. What will we be talking about Tuesday evening once Jeffrey Lurie holds his annual news conference?
Oh man, I don't know. It's like sometimes I've only been a part of the last two of these. And so from what I understand, sometimes like he says something kind of off the wall. So maybe it's something that we don't even expect or anticipate right in this moment. However, that being said, I still feel like the dominant conversation of this offseason has been AJ Brown. And I think that this is going to be Jeffrey's first time to speak about it. And I know earlier during the season, there was a report about him having a conversation with AJ during a practice about his social media posting as of late at the time. And it'll be his first opportunity to talk about that too. So I think it'll be good to get his perspective on the ongoing situation. So I guess I don't want to call it a cop-out, but my cop-out answer is that I think AJ Brown just in general will continue to be the topic of conversation, and Lurie will have a voice in that conversation at the owners' meetings.
I don't think it's a cop-out. I think you got to be right here. You got to be accurate. I'm going to go with some comments on a different player. Jeffrey Lurie has always been effusive in his praise for Jalen Hurts, and I would expect that to continue, but I do think it will be very interesting to hear what his evaluation of the season that Jalen Hurts had, and sort of what factors he feels like led to him having a down year. What he points at as the challenges that Jalen Hurts faced. I think, I don't think it's telling in the short term, but I think it might be telling in the long term, because you often do hear that Jeffrey Lurie is the biggest fan of Jalen Hurts in the building. So I will be very curious to hear, what he has to say about the season that Jalen had, and, what his outlook is on getting the most out of Jalen going into next year. So that's one that I had. I think another one, which maybe will be a question in the future here. I'm sure he'll be asked about the stadium and what his plans are, with the stadium. And I wouldn't shock me if he's asking about the fact that there isn't as much of a discussion about the tush push this year as there was a year ago for the annual league meeting. So there'll be a lot of topics to talk to him about. But I do want to hear what he has to say about Jalen and kind of where they go from last season.
I think that's a good choice, because the quarterback is always the hot topic, and it's always the most important topic when it comes to the franchise, and then also the home of the franchise too. That's a big question.
Yeah.
The lease at Lincoln Financial expires in 2032, so that is coming up sooner than any of us really realize. So those conversations are likely ongoing, as we know based on the survey that they sent out last summer to season ticket holders. So this will be his first opportunity since those surveys were sent out to also talk about it publicly.
Yeah, shout out to our friend. I had second shout out of the show for him, Zach Berman. He had wrote a story about the stadium today and made a really good point that the Buffalo Bills sent out a survey for their season ticket holders, and 7 years later, there is now basically them opening their new stadium. So the fact that the Eagles are starting to ask questions of their season ticket holders about the stadium suggests that it's probably maybe not. It's probably closer than people realize, is what I would say. I think that they're probably looking at a similar timeline. So it'd be interesting to hear what he says about it. All right, we're going to go to our second break here. On the other side, we still have, I think it's 6. Everybody knows math's not my strong suit. We have 5 or 6 topics left in a Smith Tech O. And yeah, we'll see if maybe we talk about some potential trades on the other side. I've got to tell you guys about a sweet mystery going on at your local Rita's. For a limited time, you can get Peeps flavored Italian ice, and it comes with a tasty secret. Peeps ice is springtime sweet and deliciously mysterious. So be sure to stop by and try it at your local Rita's. And while you're there, try and guess the mystery flavor on the Rita's website. If you win, you can win free Rita's for a year. Imagine that, free Rita's for an entire year. Just go to ritasIce.com/peeps, and if you guess the right flavor, you'll have a chance to win water ice for the whole year. Just make sure you get there before it's too late. And while you're at it, don't forget to download the Rita's app today. New app users will get a free small gelati, ice, or custard with their first purchase. I'm a gelati guy, but whatever you guys prefer, it's free on the house, courtesy of Rita's with the app download. So make sure you treat yourself to a scoop of happiness today. Be cool, go to Rita's. Starting something new can be terrifying. Before I joined the show, I remember thinking, what if nobody listens? What if my co-host does a terrible Irish accent before and during the show? But sometimes you just got to take the leap, and it definitely helps when you've got the right tools behind you, like Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses worldwide and about 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. You can build a beautiful online store with hundreds of ready-to-use templates, and Shopify's built-in AI tools can help write product descriptions, page headlines, and even improve product photos. You can run email and social campaigns, manage inventory, handle shipping and returns, and track analytics all in one place. They also have a 24/7 customer support service that always has your back. So it's time to turn those what ifs into real dollars with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/allcity. Again, that's shopify.com/allcity. All right, we are back on the PHLY Eagles podcast. Olivia, I have to say, and I'm surprised it took me 38 minutes to say this, it's good to see your face on StreamYard again. People don't know. Well, some of these people may know that we did a pregame show together when we were colleagues at the Inquirer, and we always were sitting right next to each other. Even though we were sitting right next to each other, we would do the show on StreamYard. So it's nice, Do you want to get a hello everyone in just for old time's sake?
No, I think you're doing a good job, a great job.
Thank you. Yeah, the hosting chair. The hosting chair is not my favorite chair to be in, if I'm being honest. But it is weird that I'm the host on our StreamYard situation here. But if your parents are listening, shout out to Lurie, shout out to Keith.
They definitely are.
Yes. Oh well, trust me. I'll give them the wave. They'll know what that means and they'll appreciate that. So, all right. So, do you have a topic in mind? You've got. I think I know what you have left, but you probably have a better sense than I do at this point.
Listen, I think we should keep talking about the draft because that's the next big event on the NFL calendar beyond the owners' meetings, and we're full steam ahead into draft season. So we'll stick with the draft, and I would like to do the Convince Me segment.
All right, I love that. I appreciate it because again, we've got a On the Clock presented by Ashley. So Olivia, I want you to convince me that the Eagles shouldn't avoid being on the clock and trade their first rounder for a difference-making veteran on defense. I have a name in mind, but do you want the name before you have to go on this quest to convince me not to make this trade?
Is it like Myles Garrett or something?
Myles Garrett is in the headlines. The Browns have reworked his contract, makes it easier to trade him. He is a player that if he's at all, even one iota on the trade block, I am certain that Howie Roseman will be calling Andrew Berry, trying to figure out what the cost is, and trying to convince Andrew Berry that the cost that he is asking for is unreasonable. And I do wonder, like I mentioned it earlier, the Eagles are in a Super Bowl window. A player like Myles Garrett is exactly the type of player that we would expect them to add to a team that is in a Super Bowl window. Convince me the Eagles shouldn't use a first rounder, multiple first rounders, to get Myles Garrett out of Cleveland.
I don't know if I can do that.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I can just start saying things. I don't know.
They should. You could go on either side of this argument. You are the guest after all.
I don't know. I think that the edge rusher position, I think, is a spot where they could stand to make an upgrade, and I'm sure Howie would like to continue to upgrade, given the fact that we know that they tried to retain Jalen Phillips. So that would suggest that they're not necessarily done adding to the position if they were interested in bringing a player of Phillips caliber back to the team. Not to say that Myles Garrett is Jalen Phillips, but Myles Garrett has a much better track record than Jalen Phillips. He is a better player than Jalen Phillips, and would require more to bring him to the team. So I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know all of what it would take to bring him here, and like the salary cap ramifications that it would also entail. Just kind of speaking off the top of my head, but I would think that Howie should try to do everything that he could if Myles Garrett would potentially be available in the trade. And I'm sure the Browns at this point in time would say no. But if he were to become available, I think that adding a player of his caliber would be a real boost to the edge rushers core that's going into a season with Jalix Hunt and Nolan Smith as their top two rushers. And this time last year, the Eagles were in the exact same position, and they went into the season with the two of them as their top two rushers. And then they went out and got Jalen Phillips at the trade deadline. So are they going to take that path again? Are they going to go out and try to acquire a veteran? I would think that the latter makes sense. Whether or not that's Myles Garrett, I don't know, but certainly worth a try.
I completely agree. I'm gonna float a fake trade here for you.
Okay.
So let's say the Eagles are trading 2 1s, probably a future third, and Moro Ajomo for Myles Garrett. How do you feel about that trade package? Do you feel like I undersold? I feel like that's pretty good compensation. I think people will be surprised at what it would take to get Myles Garrett in a trade. I mean, he is like Micah Parsons plus, in my opinion. Now he's older, but still he's the best edge rusher in the NFL. I mean, he's proven that. So to me, I think 2 1s, probably a day 2 pick in the future, and Moro Ajomo is probably in the neighborhood of what gets it done. How do you feel about that compensation?
I think for the Browns, they'd probably be into that. I don't know how willing the Eagles would be. I think that's the big question. I'm the
Eagles I do it because Moro is like a good trade chip because he's got, a team would love to extend him.
Moro is probably the last, I'm thinking more about the first round picks, I think. Cause yes, Moro, if they're not going to sign him to a new deal, the Eagles, they might as well try to move him for something, I guess, at the top of his value, and get something in return for him. So that to include him as part of the trade package, this hypothetical trade package, I think makes sense. It's just the picks. That's a lot to part with. But that's, I think, what you would have to part with.
Yeah, I would do that trade. I think the Browns might say no. I think the Browns, I know the Browns would probably say, it's not Moro Ajomo. How about Jalen Carter? I think that would be a bridge too far for me. Anyway, that's going to do it for On the Clock. I appreciate your effort to try and convince me, Olivia, but I know that your heart's like me. You want to push the chips into the middle of the table. So, all right. So where are you going to go next on the board for Tick Smith Tack O here?
All right. I think I am due a real miscellaneous topic. I want to go crazy here. So I kind of forget what we already picked.
If you want to go crazy, go with convince me. It's one of the only non-Eagles questions I have on the board here. I'm going to give you a hint.
And I'm so good at convincing you, as we've already established. So let's go miscellaneous convince me.
Okay. So I want you to convince me. It's opening day. I want to be, I guess you could call it festive. I think opening day to some people is a holiday. I want you to convince me what the best food item to get is on an opening day baseball game. You go whichever direction you want here. You could go a snack, you go a meal, you go dessert. I've got my picks. I was even conscious enough to pick a vegetarian option out there, but I want to hear what yours are before I give you mine.
So are we exclusively talking Citizens Bank Park and their food options?
I wasn't going to make it just Citizens Bank Park, but I feel like it's the park that we both know the best. So,
I
yeah.
couldn't really tell you anything else about. I mean, I've been to other ballparks, but I'm not as familiar with the food offerings in other ballparks as I am with Citizens Bank Park, because I am like not outspoken, but I will say I'm maybe a little bit critical of the food offerings at Citizens Bank Park for people who have certain dietary restrictions.
Yes, absolutely. Because literally, like my top 3 are all red meat options, which is, come on, we got to round out the palette here.
What's going on? Let's put some other. I mean, I think one of the things that I like to eat at Citizens Bank Park, I like the barbecue place. I don't remember what it's called, but I like that they have like a turkey sandwich. So I do enjoy that turkey sandwich when I'm at Citizens Bank Park. That's probably like my favorite thing to eat. But like in terms of a classic baseball food, I think the helmet sundae is the most adorable.
It is the best. That was my choice. That was so I oversold. I said I was giving a vegetarian option. That's my vegetarian option.
I'm not vegetarian, just because this is confusing. I don't eat red meat. So I'll eat the turkey sandwich. I like a chicken cheesesteak, but these aren't necessarily baseball ballpark opening day.
Yeah, but I feel like a chicken cheesesteak in Philadelphia at a baseball game, I feel like that counts. Yeah, I feel like that counts.
On a hot day, especially today is like a beautiful day with a helmet Sunday.
It's not going to melt too fast either. Yeah. Oh man, I got to get there. I got to get to the ballpark soon. My choice, non-vegetarian, is the hot Italian sausages that they do like on the flat top. Those are a staple of like my childhood going to Phillies games. They're not they're not gourmet, but they're great. So I enjoy them every time I go to the stadium. And then like popcorn is always good. You're never going to be disappointed with a box of popcorn. I know that that's not the flashiest choice. So, but those were mine.
Good choices. Another ice cream, if just to keep going on with the ice cream, I love the Phillies Graham Slam. I don't know if they serve that at the ballpark. I don't know. I only know that from like the grocery store, but if they do, that would be
very, very strong. Completely agree. So, all right. Well, I'm glad we got a little bit of nonsense in because I did go pretty Eagles heavy. Listen, I got a real reporter on the show here. I needed to make sure we hit on a lot of Eagles topics. So we're gonna take our final break, and then we're gonna reassess the board. We're gonna see what topics we have left here. I think we've got maybe some first round NFL draft speculation and a few other things. So make sure you stay with us, and we'll be right back. So a couple of days ago, we were just going live with the show, and I just realized like I didn't eat lunch, and I just got hungry at the worst possible time. And on my way home, I made just a beeline to Wawa, and I got to tell you guys that what they have offering right now is a real lifesaver for me. I think it can be for you guys as well. They've got the $5 deals all day, and it honestly does just make life so much easier. If you're starting early, you can grab a $5 big breakfast meal deal. We're talking a sizzly, a hash brown, and any size hot or iced coffee. That's a full morning win for $5, available from 5 to 11 a.m. Later in the day, the value keeps rolling with a roasted chicken sandwich or a crispy chicken sandwich created your way starting at $5. They've even got one of my favorites, a new teriyaki recipe for a limited time. So make sure you guys are starting your day strong and fuel up whenever you need with Wawa's $5 deals. It's a limited time only. Exclusions apply. You can see wawa.com for details. Gotta have a Wawa. So I mentioned on the show yesterday that I've got the one knee that like swells up whenever it rains. And if you guys are like me and you're feeling it after a tough workout, a pickup basketball game, or just everyday life catching up to you, you shouldn't ignore it. You should go with the best, Rothman Orthopedics. They've earned national recognition as the #1 physician practice by Castle Connolly for having the most top doctors in orthopedic care. That means you get top tier specialists right there and ready to help. Scheduling is simple. Just visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to book your appointment. Check out Rothman's Fast Scheduler program while you're there for access to their VIP scheduling team to get scheduled with the right provider, or tap into Rothman Now for immediate virtual access to an orthopedic expert who can point you in the right direction. So don't wait it out. Go to rothmanortho.com/PHLY and take the first steps toward feeling like yourself again just in time for the warm weather, and make sure that you are at 100% whether it's a pickup basketball game or a workout. All right, we are back on the PHLY Eagles podcast. All right, so I think ace producer Lindsay And we need to talk about a different ace producer later. Ace producer Lindsay, the greatest. I think we have an updated look at the board and what you have available. Look at that.
I'm a pretty bad tic-tac-toe player. Jeez.
I mean, you haven't been able to see the board in your defense, but you still got some viability left in here. So maybe you go across and you can actually still win.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely gonna win because I'm playing against myself.
You are. That is fair. I got to be a cordial host.
Well, you teased to a very specific thing, so I feel like I can't not pick that one as to not disappoint the people who are listening. So in this position,
You've got a responsibility to the audience. I appreciate that. So you're going to predict the future NFL Draft Edition. What position will the Eagles take in the first round if they don't trade their first rounder for Myles Garrett?
Yeah, right. Oh, well, I guess we already offensive line. I feel like if I go back to every year at the Inquirer since I've been on the beat, as you know, we've done this draft meter.
Meter. So many fond memories of the draft meter.
Of a numerical grade rating to each player based on how likely we think it is that the Eagles will select them in the first round, specifically at the spot where they're drafting, or at least going into the draft where they're drafting. And I think every year, or at least the last couple of years, I've put an offensive tackle up there because there's just been this question of, is Lane done soon? So I think I'm probably going to end up rating, a Kadyn Proctor or someone of that, that tier of offensive tackle. I'm sure there will be, at least 3 or 4 of them on our list this year. And I'll probably end up rating them more highly than some of the other players simply because that position has been on their list, I think, and they haven't drafted, a tackle of that caliber. So I think the safest pick, the safest play is to say offensive tackle, but I don't think anyone like in a million years last year would have been like, oh yeah, they're going to take an inside linebacker at 31. But at the same time, it makes sense based on who Campbell is and the kind of player that he is and the athlete that he is and the value that he has in Vic Fangio's system. So like, there's a lot of factors at play here. I don't think the Eagles should just take a tackle just because they are going to need a tackle at some point. They should pick the best player available, as they say they do. And but if I had to really put my money on one position, I'll go tackle.
Yeah, I completely agree. I do remember last year with the draft meter, we felt the pressure because I think we went 4 years in a row getting it right. Our highest draft metered player was the player that the Eagles picked, and man, Jahad Campbell wasn't even on the board for us.
Wow.
So I'm sure you guys will do better next year. You'll probably get the streak back. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that. But I agree. I think that offensive tackle is the obvious one. I think that if like Kenyon Sadiq is probably the Jahad Campbell mold, where it's like if a player that talented makes it that far, it would make sense for them. But I don't think. I think this one's pretty straightforward. I think offensive tackle, or at least offensive line, make a lot of sense for them. I think edge rusher is probably the other one that I'd throw in there, but I think they need to go offense early in the draft, and I think offensive tackle will be high on the list. I guess receiver, we could have thrown receiver in there too, obviously. I think, especially with A.J. Brown's situation unresolved, I think that one would make sense too.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I would put definitely leaning offense, even though there are some pressing needs on defense. I think that, as Howie said, leading into the combine and talking about the pendulum starting to swing in the other direction of, balancing out some of the defensive players who will become expensive on more expensive deals as they become eligible for new contracts in the coming years, trying to balance them out with some low cost offensive talent on rookie contracts. I think that trend, we're going to start to see that shift this season.
Yep. Completely agree. All right. So I think you have the free agency would you rather and the free agency predict the future left. And then you have miscellaneous would you rather. I think that's what you have left. Got 3 topics.
Well, I was going to predict the future free agency after the break until I felt pressured to do the draft.
Okay. So we'll go predict the future in free agency next. Without any more host meddling, we will let you pick the board as you see fit. Best topic available. So this one is only tangentially free agency related, but I wanted to squeeze it in. Does Jalen Carter sign an extension before training?
Whew, I think that is going to be one of the big questions, actually, to tease an article on Inquirer.com tomorrow morning. Some of the, just like big questions going into the owners' meetings this weekend. That question is on my list, like the timeline of a Jalen Carter extension. I think it makes sense for the Eagles to do it now. What was the arbitrary deadline that you get? Sorry.
Training camp. I don't think it's arbitrary. I think that probably they would like to have this done before training camp. Howie Roseman has talked before about not liking, to sign players to extensions mid-season is what he would say. I don't think training camp it like precludes them from getting a deal done, but I think it is like a natural deadline.
Yes, I agree with you from the standpoint of like as Howie has said in the past, he doesn't like to do these types of extensions during the season. So to get out in front of it, it's now or next off season in theory. But no, I think that is something that it would benefit the Eagles to do it now. As long as they're confident that Jalen Carter, especially coming off the shoulder injuries, if he's going to be able to return to his 2024 form, but they need him up there, especially to make an impact in the pass rush, given the current state of the edge rushers core too. I think that his ability to be disruptive there will probably take some of the pressure off of the edge rushers. If they're not able to add, the Myles Garrett in the hypothetical trade. But especially as the cap continues to rise and Carter is going to reset the market, that. And so I think getting it done as soon as possible, I think is going to be important.
Yeah, I agree. I do think they get a deal done with him. I think they sign into an extension this offseason. I've said on the show before, I don't think it's as straightforward a decision as some of the other homegrown players that they've been eager to extend, that especially guys who will reset the market. Usually the Eagles do this almost as soon as it's possible to do it. But I think, I still think they'll get a deal done. I don't think that they're going to get a discount because it is Drew Rosenhaus. And, I think that probably is part of what will make this a little bit of a harder deal to figure out. I think the number is going to be the thing I'm most curious to see. 31.5 million is currently the top of the market. Chris Jones leads the market. And I think Jalen Carter not only has a chance to reset that market, I think he has a chance to really blow that market out of the water. So where the number falls is going to be very interesting. It wouldn't shock me if another complicating factor here, especially with that number being so high, is what happens with AJ Brown. Maybe this is the type of thing where, June 5th is when the Jalen Carter extension comes down because they finally have clarity on whether or not AJ Brown will be with the team next year and if they have to take on that dead cap hit or if they could spread it out. So I think that there are a few things that probably are making this more complicated, but the bottom line is that Jalen Carter is the type of player the Eagles prioritize keeping in-house. I wouldn't, even in the fake Myles Garrett trade we talked about earlier, I wouldn't put Jalen Carter in that trade. I would want to trade for Myles Garrett to put him next to Jalen Carter. So for that reason, I think they get a deal done. I just think that it probably is a harder one to figure out than most of the other contracts we've looked at before.
I think that is, I don't think Howie's going to say very much about it, but I think this is an opportunity for him to at least have a public vote of confidence in Jalen Carter. If he's not going to talk about contract negotiations in public, but he can talk about what Carter means to the team now and in the future.
Yeah, completely agree. All right, we have to go to overtime, overtime. I guess overtime works. So be sure to stay with us or follow along at allphly.com. I got to tell you, Olivia, I always joke with Lindsay, there's always something that I'm going to be laying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, just replaying in my head and being like, why did I do that? Today was an overtime. It was the biggest layup of all time. Overtime. We don't need overtime. We don't need EJ time. I'm going to be really upset. Olivia time would have been good, but really just overtime was right there for me. Man, just brutal.
I think we're going to have to end it here. I don't know how I can.
I was going to say, I felt fine about my hosting duty right up until that moment. So, I could use some pity likes and some pity comments in the chat, guys. I need a little bit of a pick me up to get me through this overtime segment. You have two topics left. They're both would you rathers. It's free agency and miscellaneous. So which one would you like to do first?
Let's do miscellaneous first.
Okay. I told you that there's not a lot of non-Eagles in here.
Okay.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask one of Jeffrey Lurie's favorite reporters. I won't say you're the favorite. I don't want to put that mantle. I know that some people will be upset if I say that you're the favorite. Even though I kind of think you are the favorite. If you were Jeffrey Lurie, would you rather preserve weather games with an open air stadium or host a Super Bowl, NCAA tournaments at a prospective Eagle stadium?
Can I pick the gray area where it's like you've got the retractable roof and maybe the roof is only closed for very select occasions or maybe even select months during the year, so you can have those events at the new stadium, but you can still have the cold weather games that make playing in the Northeast the challenge that it is, and sometimes the advantage that it is for the Eagles.
I mean, that's very reasonable, but for the sake of the exercise, no, you cannot. You have to pick one or the other.
Okay. You know what? To be very, I guess, cynical and motivated by money, which maybe is the only way to be if you're in that role, I think you have to pick the dome and pick the option that is going to bring revenue to the city of Philadelphia, even if it is not well received by fans, by players, or I don't know, maybe players would love it if they didn't have to play outdoors, but I don't know.
It's probably case by case. I think if they had to choose one or the other, I think they would choose the dome. I think they choose an indoor stadium and have an opportunity to host Super Bowls and other events. But I don't care. I'm romantic. I want them to keep the stadium. I like old stadiums. I've said this before. When we were at Highmark Stadium, I wanted to call it Orchard Park. I don't know why. When we were at Highmark Stadium, I just remember looking at that stadium and going, why would somebody get rid of this place? Like, it's beautiful. There's a history here. There's a prestige about being in an old stadium. And, I don't like how the game has become so much about money that you just tear down like a perfectly fine stadium because it's cheaper to build a new one than to renovate it. It's against the spirit of all the memories that you have in that stadium. And I'm sure Eagles fans can attest. So if I were Jeffrey Lurie, I would respect that. I would listen to the PHLY Eagles podcast if I was Jeffrey Lurie. Of course. I mean, of course he probably is listening. And if he's not, then what is he doing? I think I would say, that EJ guy, he made a really strong point about a couple of things, but especially the stadium. And we're going to keep the link. We're going to renovate it, put a retractable roof on it if you feel like that really matters. But to me, I don't like this, using stadiums like they're tires. You just replace them after 20 years and just build something new. It feels against the spirit of how special stadiums can be for a lot of people.
Listen, I just want to say I agree with you. I just don't know if someone, I'm not even saying if Jeffrey Lurie, someone in his position, an NFL owner, would agree with you if they're more focused on the bottom line than they are on the warm and fuzziness of the sentimentality of the stadium. Because I agree with you. I think that Lambeau Field is an incredible place. Orchard Park.
Yeah.
Now you've got me calling it Orchard Park too. Highmark Stadium is an incredible place. The one thing that was not incredible about that place was the walk in the rain that we had to take.
It was awful.
To the locker room. Not incredible, but everything else, it was a cool place.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. You're for those that don't know, you are a Liverpool fan, diehard Liverpool fan. Anfield Liverpool Stadium was built in 1884 and they just have kept up with it. They've cared for the stadium. Why can't the NFL stadiums be like that? Why can't they embrace the history? Just treat it well. Just care for it. I don't know. That's one of my hills that I'll die on, is that
I've been saying that forever. As long as I've been a Liverpool, as soon as I came out of the womb as a Liverpool fan, I've been saying that.
Exactly. Yeah, you were like, that Steven Gerrard is great. I don't actually. He's probably that's not when you were born, but you just upset all the Liverpool fans that thought you were on their side. That'd be like being like Donovan McNabb. Never heard of him.
Cover is blown as a Liverpool fake fan.
You're just in an emotional state because Mo Salah, you just haven't been able to get past that yet. I get it.
I haven't been thinking straight since that.
All right. So you've got one topic left and it's a would you rather. And I'll be honest, I think it's a pretty straightforward one. Mm-hmm. free agency edition. So we're talking free agent signings. Would you rather get a Pro Bowl season from Arnold Ebiketie or Marcus Epps?
Arnold Ebiketie for sure.
Yeah, I think that one's pretty easy.
Yeah.
I mean, a Marcus Epps Pro Bowl season means that you're not riding the Drew Makuba roller coaster. You're not worried about him potentially not being a Super Bowl caliber starting safety because you have one of Marcus Epps. But yeah, I think this one, if you got Pro Bowl level play out of Arnold Ebiketie, that changes a lot about the complexion of the Eagles depth chart. Man, I now I'm sad that the game ended on such a whimper. I was hoping that we got that one in like the middle and we could just kind of get right through it.
Just kidding. I think and then here I'm going to make some big argument about Marcus Epps. I don't know. I mean, yeah, no, I think it's hard to argue. I mean, yeah, I think it would be great for the Eagles to get Pro Bowl caliber play out of Marcus Epps, but I think it would be more impactful to get Pro Bowl caliber play out of an edge rusher than I think it would a safety.
Is there any argument for, like, let's say it was Drew Makuba? Would that flip it entirely the other way for you? I feel like Drew Makuba on a rookie contract, I probably would take that over Arnold Ebiketie, but I feel like that one's still pretty straightforward.
Yeah, but then if you can't, like, Makuba's still on his rookie deal. If you can't re-sign Arnold Ebiketie, then he walks. Maybe you get a comp pick, and he goes and signs a big contract.
Okay, so you're getting a third-round pick that maybe you then use to replace Drew Makuba if he didn't play well. So
there you go.
All right. So maybe that was a better question. All right. Well, I appreciate you being such a good sport with the Smith Tech O. You've answered all these questions very admirably. And I feel like I've been a nice host, at least a gracious host. So I'm curious, Olivia, you have been on record on previous podcasts saying that, Cliff is your guy. Shout out to Cliff, ace producer for the Ringers Philly special. Love Cliff, but I just need to know where the power rankings. Sometimes we like to end the show with power rankings. Like, what would the power rankings be for a former colleague, someone who has been a close friend of yours for many years, very close with your family, plugged all your work earlier in the show? How would that person rank against Cliff? A guy who you probably haven't even talked to since that podcast.
That's a great question. Well, here's my question for you, EJ, is like, just because I call Cliff my guy, does that mean you can't also be my guy? Can I have multiple guys?
I guess you can, but the context is important here, as you know, because you said I have to go with my guy, Cliff. And that was instead of going with me on my side of the argument. I can't even remember what the argument was, but
you don't remember what the argument was? It was about
him outing my PHLY sports employment.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one was pretty straightforward. I love Cliff, but he kind of sold me out there.
Well, you know what? Do as I do, not as I say, because I too could have outed you. I could have gone on social media or some other platform and been like, well, EJ, it's been great knowing you. Thank you so much for your companionship over these last several years. But I didn't do that. So I put the ball in your court. So.
All right. Well, for the record, I am taking this as a win in the power rankings. The last thing I wanted to ask you, for those who enjoy espresso making, enjoy the art of making lattes at home, I think that they will be curious to hear how your process has gone for you, because fun fact about Olivia is that she owns one of the machines, the machine that I started with in my latte making, because I gave it to her and then sold it to her. So I'm curious how your latte art has been going, how your at-home barista experience has been.
Well, the latte art is not going because I have not learned how to do it.
Sounds about right. Even when you learn, it is a terrible experience. You have more losses than wins, no matter what you do, I would say.
I just don't have, I guess, the patience right now to learn. I also don't think I have fully learned how to froth milk well. I think I'm doing it, and it's very inconsistent. Sometimes it's super foamy. Sometimes it is very thin. So I think I need to first get very consistent with my milk frothing. And then perhaps I can learn how to do latte art. But I'm just I'm not there yet. But all in all, I'm really enjoying making lattes, and I love your old machine. I think it's been perfect.
Warms my heart to hear that.
My needs. I keep though, I am fully now on reels, espresso making people making espresso on Reels. So I'm like fully in that and seeing other
Yep.
people's setups. And I'm like, you can spend like a car's worth of money on.
Sure. Yeah. It gets every hobby can be so crazy and so ridiculous in what you can spend on the stuff. I say that as somebody who has bought another machine and therefore was able to sell you my old one. I for those wondering, I gave you a good deal. I promise. I gave you like a loan period where you were able to make sure you liked it. But yeah, no, the latte, the latte art process is a grueling one. Most of yours will look like Rorschach tests, even if you're pretty good at it. But yeah, we can. You know what we should do. Now that I'm saying it on the podcast, it will be. Like a commitment, like you, me, and my Julia, should go to like a barista class. Like, I think that would be so fun, to like have someone teach me all of the things that I don't know about making good lattes. But I'm glad that your process has been good. We have to have you over. You can hang out with Maddox and Pharaoh, and you can watch me fail at steaming milk, and maybe that will help a little bit.
I just want to see your new machine too, because then I'm going to be like, oh, that's what I'm missing out
on. Yeah. They're but honestly, your machine, you can spend the rest of your life with that machine and you'd be happy. So anyway, I appreciate you letting me get some latte talking on the show. This has been therapeutic for me. But that is going to do it for the PHLY Eagles podcast. Thank you to Olivia, our special guest, for joining us. Thank you to Lindsay behind the scenes, making it happen. The Tic Tac or the Smith Tac O graphics were incredible. And thank you to everybody watching at home. We will be back at 2:00 tomorrow. I believe it's going to be Bo and Deniz in studio. So it should be a great show. And I will see you guys next week. So thanks to everybody. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.